you had to make that jump. I think, I started my dojo like in the year 2000. So, and it was like community halls, leftover students from the people I had upset.
Welcome back, Mal. It was some time we haven't spoke. My first thing I want to take it off my shoulders. My huge apologies. I was really looking forward to your seminar at Terrace. I booked myself in, but the boss didn't look on the calendar, and unfortunately, we all got that supervisor at home that overrides everything. So my apologies. I really wanted to join you on the Okudo training. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for it's been a few years, hasn't it? I think the last time I spoke to you on a podcast was just after lockdown, wasn't it? Something like
Yeah.
that. And no worries with the seminar. I think the thing is with as you'll understand, because you're doing a lot of seminars, is that you can never really predict, how it's going to go, and the timings. There's so much on people's calendars right now, and like you say, you've got to speak to the boss too. So if it's not your seminar, you've got a freebie, haven't you? So it's easy. I mean, and again, it's a reasonably small network, so I'll probably see you very soon anyway. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just had a really nice seminar with Ian and I just lost his name. Lee, right?
Oh no, that was Lee's been putting photographs up of things we've done in the past.
Okay.
So like 2000, I think it was 2014. It must have been around about that sort of time that I met Lee Taylor, and I've been trying to support him, all this time in the same. So and Lee has Ian quite a lot, or annually, doesn't he? So I was trying to support those events as well, trying to, you know, I suppose, people forget that I got a karate background half the time. So when I go along to these events, they just kind of see me as that kind of combat sport sort of end of things. But I still enjoy, Ian's work really. He's evolving all the time. So it's good to touch base, yeah.
Because I was speaking other week with Kiran, and he was saying that you get kind of two lines of a teaching. You still got your GKA,
Yeah.
or the Goshin Karate Academy, and
Yeah.
Kudo, and they kind of separate, right, to each other as a programs in your
Well,
dojo.
they were. I think it's kind of like how it's evolving. Like now you're in a full-time dojo, and you had to make that jump. I think, I started my dojo at like in the year 2000. So and it was like community halls, leftover students from the people I had upset, and people that wanted to follow me, and usual sort of things. And I was like, oh well, you're not following me. I'm just doing my thing now. And if you want to be part of that, you can be part of that. So like natural evolution. So, the whole thing's been based on, I guess, that, you talk about it a lot, where you've got to have your core art, haven't you? You've got to have the one that you stick to. And I think the GKA dojo for me, it's like, and again, I think there's a lot of similarities between your development, because it's what do you call, what you practice,
Yeah.
and it first, it starts off as what it means to you. So I was studying very traditional arts, and being a young man, kind of heading off and going into combat sports and getting my fix there, because you weren't getting the necessary combat within the karate.
Mm.
And what meant to me the most right then was self-defense. So Goshin was the kind of the banner. But let's face it, no one really understands what Goshin means. So
Yeah.
you ended up explaining to people, oh, it means self-defense. And they're like, well, why don't you just say that? And I'm like, well, it's karate, and you got to have that, that way of explaining it. So I stuck with that, and it was kind of Goshin Karate Association, so GKA, and then obviously with having that kind of foot in the combat sports, that just, it could never really get rid of it, because people want it. But it's also an age bracket thing. It's kind of it's, kids want self-defense in the image, whereas in teens want to like fight to the death. And in their 20s, they may still be doing it. And then after that, people are a bit like, oh, I got to go work, and that's where the safety equipment comes in. And obviously, that's a natural lead into Kudo, isn't it? So, and because I was so passionate about it, I guess it kind of left me in this position, especially because I was doing a lot of traveling. That I couldn't take Kudo in to what I was doing. It had to be a separate identity, because we're a Kudo International Federation official branch. So then does that become the overarching, club, and
Mm.
it kind of did, it started becoming the main focus for people, and karate became the kind of the second then. Um, but then in the last couple of years with combat sambo, and the reason for combat sambo is because there's not enough competition in the UK. There's not enough activity on the tournament base, so we have to travel abroad, and then it's people can't get time off work. The adults, it's too expensive for the kids, so you're making a very small team when you go abroad. So
Yeah.
it's not accessible then for so many people. But Kudo is like a mixed martial art, like a Japanese mixed martial art.
Yeah.
It's nice to study, so it's popular,
Mm.
and that's why I guess a lot of now I look at the name just being GKA Dojo, because from our dojo you can practice karate, combat sambo, Kudo. Mark Spencer, when I met him, when he wanted to follow the path into Kudo, we have a good partnership there, so it's kind of I can up my standard in sort of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Mhm.
and obviously getting a blue belt and a mark was nice, because like no one really put a quality stamp on my grappling alone,
Mm.
so even though I graded in judo as a kid and stuff, it was kind of like that was quite interesting. I can see the addiction with BJJ, but
Yeah.
it's like it's a bit for me. BJJ is a little bit like in karate you have kata, which is a little bit of a rabbit hole, right? And then
Yeah.
you go into kata, and all of a sudden it's the history and all this information, and you just get lost. Whereas in BJJ is the same. You can kind of look at something and then all the information, and I tend to get a little bit lost, and I have to kind of bring myself back into the center. So so I guess what Kira was saying was it was true to a certain extent that I'm wearing a number of hats, but what I'm trying to do is put it all under just one and make it more manageable, I guess, for the
Yeah.
future. Yeah,
Funny enough, you've been saying about the name, and as you know, I've been struggling a lot to find that identity because we are the Shinaido Club, right? I know
yeah,
what that means, but nobody
yeah,
else knows.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I noticed that using my name, I don't feel comfortable with it. That's a kind of Polish thing. In Poland, you don't use your name for karate stars. You use
Okay.
lineage. It needs to be
Yeah,
Kyokushin or something recognizable.
yeah,
So I was trying to think, and now I'm doing BJJ just like you do.
mm,
We've always been doing throws from wrestling. So I was thinking what to do, and actually ask ChatGPT, what do you think about this name? And it gives me a reasons to justify. Like it's
yeah,
approachable. It sounds that you can do everything in there, so it's inclusive. Okay, that sounds quite okay with me. It's kind of a what we do anyway. So I put that. And funny thing is that immediately bumped me up in the search results on Google.
no, right. That's interesting.
Two places up, which is like without minutes, within the minutes. So the other question,
Yeah.
how do you finding BJJ in your age?
Oh, painful. I think the thing was, and I guess I obviously, I try to follow, even if I'm not overly active, making comments. My brain's just fried. I'm wearing glasses now, so if I don't wear my glasses, I can't
Yeah,
see the small print on my phone if I can't expand it. But um, it's sugar. Sugar's my enemy. Like it was
yeah,
my friend. I got through life on sugar, and then now 40s and stuff, that it just goes on in fat
yeah,
immediately. Age wise, if most people know, if they know me personally, I came from like having really bad health as a kid. The old
right,
cliche. and my eczema and asthma. Now, as I'm getting older, my asthma's starting to return. So, I've got to be active to keep a base fitness. And in regards to the way that we do the BJJ, when we go to Spence in Yorkshire, or if he comes down, we look at technical aspects, and we roll then every week. And we do certain techniques. So it's a little bit like, I suppose, and again, this is why I can never not frame things from karate point of view, because if it's your whole childhood and your whole life, it helps you to understand life in a way, doesn't it? So, the way the history of the way that things move around the world, right? So the original karate system that I was in was called Karate Budokan, and it was a Malaysian-based karate, right? So the actual dojo was in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and the Master Chu used to travel to Taiwan to try that, and he brought Japanese instructors over, and you can see that the key element to it was that he would take certain fundamentals, and then they would just practice them over and over and over and over and over again, right? Which is very karate anyway, isn't it? So just repetition,
Yeah,
repetition, and you get very good at those kind of basics. So the same thing when we have the BJJ. It's like, I think when you go to a BJJ, you can get and all this information, and you can go away and not remember anything. So I usually say that in the seminars when I teach. It's like going to a comedy club and trying to remember all the jokes. When you go home to
yeah,
tell someone, you can't remember anything. So instead of just kind of going down that rabbit hole, I pick out the things that are really important to our game from what Spen teaches. And then we, on a Sunday, have a class which is an MMA circuit. So we just batter the bags, standing, all the rest of it on the floor. And then, for a solid 40 minutes, it's just constant rolling. And people can pick. So the other thing that I'm looking at BJJ for influence is that, you got that ego in karate, for instance. If you stopped, you were weak. It's pain, get over it. It's like weakness leaving the body and all this type of stuff, right? Whereas with BJJ, you can see people picking and choosing the roles they have,
yeah,
and that's why and can I go back to your question? I got all around the houses, but I think it's as an age thing. I just pick the roles I have. I attend the sessions that I know I'm going to be all right with. I'm limping today from like teaching, right? Elbows, knees, headbutts, and then during sparring, kneeing lazy and catching an elbow right at the center of
yeah,
my thigh, and I'm limping around. So it's like, do I just jump straight back into rounds tonight, or do I just leave it a little bit longer and pick my fights? So it's the
yeah.
ego thing, I reckon.
I adopted that as well from the BJJ. I actually love it, and I said to my guys, if you don't feel like you wanna spar with somebody, you just say it. You don't need
Yeah,
to justify it. It's your choice, you know. We all,
yeah,
in my age, my main thing in BJJ is to not get injured. So
yeah,
I'm not going. I managed to let go of my ego and I tap before it happens, just
yeah,
to survive, right? Because the
yeah.
healing is much longer than it used to be. So I love that aspect about BJJ, and I took it to us and in my karate and in seminars. I say, if you don't want to train with somebody, it doesn't mean you might be autistic like Danny, and he just doesn't feel
Mm,
comfortable training with you. Don't
mm.
dig into it because it's just gonna make it worse. So
Yeah,
accept it as it is and move on.
yeah, 100%,
So
100%.
with Kudo, I think we spoke before Master Azuma passed away,
Yeah,
and in especially in Kyokushin circles, I see that when the head of association passes, there's a lot of disturbances and
mm.
infighting. Is Kudo immune to it, or is there
I don't think any
a problem?
organization is immune to it. I think because when the founder passes, there's something special that goes, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think that in regards to, Kudo itself, Kenichi Osada, that they chose to be Jukucho, he is a phenomenal martial artist, an
Yeah,
established fighter with a very, very strong, background. And he was one of those in the first era that kind of, let's face it, there was Master Azuma's baby.
Mhm.
But it was Kenichi Osada and others that actually established that respect for
I,
Kudo, you know.
I think all of the highlights was of Asuda from the
Yeah,
first Kudo stuff. I
yeah,
love watching him.
yeah. I mean, didn't call him the hitman for nothing, right?
Yeah,
And I think now at his age, I've had conversations with him. We have back and forth messages, and I think the respect for as a martial artist and for karate, and generally across the board, I think he is the perfect person, if anyone, to continue it. Um, and but there's also Shion Takahashi was the highest grade. So they kind of split the role in regards to development. And I think this is a personal opinion on this, where um, Master Nozuma was pretty much like, we were sat in Malta and he was saying that he was explaining Daido Juku Kudo is Daido Juku is like, let's basic like Japanese and the art, right? And then you have Kudo, which is the combat sport for the world, okay? And they run as two separate organizations. So you got KIF and then you have Daijujuku, okay? And so and anyone around the world cannot, no matter how many seminars they've been to and how much time they've trained, they didn't grow up in Japan at Hombu, at the home. So we can't technically say that we are, you know, direct students of, we can say
mm,
that we've trained with, it's like if someone came to every seminar you've done in the last 2 years, it doesn't make them your student, does it?
yeah,
You know, so I think keeping it like that definitely helps, because then you've got the combat sport for tournament, for competition, when everybody comes together and everybody's unified under it. And if they keep the principles, the Bushido, and keep everything involved, I think it keeps everybody very tight. It also has a very, like all of them, has a structure. So obviously everybody's paying memberships, and there's an online membership system called
mhm,
the KDMS that you register all the students with. So it is quite professional from that. I can't say in the long term for anything, I know you mentioned about the leadership for the UK, for Kudo. So should I just say that? Because obviously we're live now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so what we're trying to do around the world, it's one of the key roles for being a lead is that you're trying to make the sport recognized as a sport in your own country. So, because everybody outside of the UK just looks as the UK as England, so those two terms they use. So in Japanese, they don't necessarily have a word for UK. They just have England.
Yeah,
So
same in Poland,
yeah,
mostly.
but I didn't know that till recently. So it's very hard to explain somebody that it's a united, so we have home
Yeah, yeah,
nations and they're united under one banner. And even if you give explanations of like the Olympics, where you have Great Britain and Northern
yeah.
Ireland, that type of thing, it's very, very complicated. So you had Anas in Slough, who came from Sri Lanka, and he had established a Kudo club, Windsor, and his friends Fazil and Siraj, who Fazil's in Kent and Siraj in Liverpool, they continued with their own groups, so they started teaching as well. But it was under kind of one branch, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
So there was no lead to the UK, so to speak. But outside of that, obviously, Anis is able then to say that we are a UK branch, because that's what people like understand, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, so when they wanted a federation, because he was in Wales, and I kept going, every time I go somewhere, I got a Welsh flag.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, what's this guy going on about? Why has he got a flag? And as a Welshman, I don't understand, like, it can offend people taking a flag somewhere, you know?
Mm,
And I'm just like, hey, well, Wales, because we're so used to it in the UK, like there's an English
mm,
guy, there's a Welsh flag, and we're so used to that in the UK. And going places, but then they started to see the Welsh flag as, oh, it's going to be a group of friendly, funny people that are just
yeah,
here to enjoy themselves. So we had that, and then it was like, right, okay, you're doing a lot to promote Kudo in the UK, Mel. I think you should get a group together. So we had just a meeting, chaired meeting, and then we had to have a vote. I was voting in as lead, as the UK, and I was just continuing what I was doing. But I realized then that I think the way for everybody outside of the UK, including the Japanese, to understand is to separate into home nations so we can grow.
Yeah.
So, there's three branches. Yeah, there's three solid branches in England. There's a few smaller branches that are still working their way towards official status, and then there's two in Wales, and now there's one in Scotland. So by having three leads helps splits the work for me because
Yeah.
I'm running a full-time dojo. That dojo's open 6 days a week, and it's obviously cleaning, so there's people there 7 days a week. AJ and Ethan running all the kids classes. I'm running the adults classes. If I'm not there, they're doing the adult classes as well. I'm a full-time mediator, so I work in a homeless prevention team. So I'm back and forth with crisis, so the homeless situation and migration with
Mhm.
the hotels and blah blah blah. So I'm trying to prevent homelessness. So it's a lot of work, and then on top of that, I've got to be the lead for the UK in Kudo,
Yeah.
and then Sambo on the lead for the Sambo in Wales. And I thought, what, like going back to my original one, let's keep it under one roof. So I think in Kudo in the UK is still growing, but there's not enough effort going into making a tournament, making official Kudo competition. And
Okay.
that comes down to the prevention of you need to have an official referee that's sanctioned by the Japanese. You need
Mm.
to have all the official gear, which again is another barrier to entry. I was saying to the boys, like, Brian Bates, his crew, that with MMA, you just rock up with a t-shirt and shorts. You buy shin
Yeah.
guards and 7-ounce gloves, and away you go, really. In Kudo, you need to have two gis, one blue, one white. You need a head guard, you need shitted insteps, you need the gloves. And most of this stuff is unique to the sport, so it has to be imported. So
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, where can I buy this then, Mal? Can I jump on Amazon? And you go, no, you can't really. You're gonna have to wait 6 weeks while I work out an order and get a load of money together. And then I spend a load of money, and then you give me £25 and I got £500 worth of gear in my cupboard. You know,
Yeah.
every instructor knows how that feels if you're bringing in your own kind of material. So I think, I recently and it was great to see your podcast with Mark House, Henshi Mark House.
Mhm.
I've formed a really a good friendship with Mark. I consider him quite a close friend now. In a mentorship role, I think when
Yeah.
you've got somebody in the UK, and it's not just me, there's like a number of people I know that all go to Mark for it. The all-round fighting was a natural draw, I think. But I'm looking for partners really at the moment to work on a tournament, if you like, an annual tournament which would combine Kudo, Sambo, and karate rules, you know,
Oh, cool.
um, and then make it more accessible. So that's a work in progress for next year, to start next year. So two things on next year. My daughter's going to get christened or baptized, sorry, in Spain, and then that's going to be a big one hopefully next year for her. So I joined the IBK was like 2 months ago, I think it was now.
Cool.
They put a little announcement out, but I haven't really pushed it yet because I want it to run, with some of the changes I'm making with my dojo and our kind of terms and stuff like that.
Yeah, I really really like Mark, and I see him as a mentorship as well.
Yeah.
And we just confirmed the date for next year that he's going to be teaching him with me in my dojo in April. So I'm really looking forward to that. And picking his brain on some things because obviously we are based on Ashihara, but not
Mm.
officially. We're inspired by Ashihara movement. It'll be
Yeah.
nice to see and feel from the person who is more qualified than I am from
Yeah.
Ashihara, and
Yeah.
correct some mistakes that I might be doing within because I kind of getting deeper and deeper into Ashihara. This is the style I like the most. We all
Yeah.
got like a favorite stuff, right? I like
Yeah. Yeah.
Kudo, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of more into the Ashihara Enshin side of things.
Mm.
But so I'm looking forward to do to that seminar. I was gonna ask you because you jumped in on it ahead of my question.
Oh,
which is very interesting. The last time when we spoke, you've been starting your kind of mental health side of things, but I think now you said you drifted into a homelessness, which is a very interesting topic. I mean, my best friend is a head in Poland of a homelessness department, and they have they're calling how would you translate to English, sleep houses. So he's got
okay.
like
Yeah.
the direct translation will be a warming sleep house. So you
Okay.
go somewhere where it's warm and then you can sleep for free. So they
Yeah.
starting that in October because it's starting to get cold through all the winter. So people just
Okay.
come in and they taking care of them, give them meals and so on. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of familiar with that kind of work, and I was
Yeah.
interested. Now you spark up my interest. How does that work in UK? Because you're doing that.
Well, it's kind of yeah, warm spaces. There was the buzzword here.
All
Um,
right.
that was, that kind of kicked in with all of the bills going up and a lot of pensioners not being able to put their
Mm,
heating on and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of gravitated. So basically, with the dojo, so GK Dojo as a CIC recently. So I opened up a limited company called Dojo Training Limited,
yeah.
that was offering sort of a lot of works to schools, and then we were kind of developing different ideas, and I had a shop in Barrytown, the top of Barrytown, which was a warm space basically. So it
Yeah.
was the council funded like a coffee machine, chairs and chairs. It was like a cafe basically, so people can come, but with the theme of martial arts. Because let's face it, everybody it knows that you do martial arts will know a
Yeah.
7-year-old black belt, an ex-world champion. I used to be a black belt myself. I was in the armed forces. What you do is not to the death, and everybody's got an opinion and a conversation with martial arts. So we were trying to encourage on one day some of the elderly groups that go to the Tai Chi over Barry Island. So that was another thing. That was to try to help people's mental health and just general exercise. And like obviously I'm trying to take stock now. There's another thing I was doing on Sunday morning every morning with Barry Island. So I passed that on to one of the students. I said, look, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to focus on my team to go to the World Championships and things like
Mm,
that. So that continued, but to have a warm space, there was a lot of funding for that, but it kind of stopped, you
mm,
know. Um, and I was like, right, I'm going to continue to focus. So GK Dojo still offers programs to schools as alternative to being in a school working on certain issues, like
mhm.
through the format of MMA, because kids like want to tell their friends they go MMA instead of school,
Yeah.
so they don't lose face and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of positive change there. But to be able to, as you can understand, earn money and keep paying my mortgage.
Mhm.
It was me on my own, and then AJ. So I brought AJ into the fold. I was giving training to him, more like youth work, social kind of work, or occupational
Mm,
therapy influenced work. So he got all trained up, and I was like, right, there's not enough money for two of us, solid money. And we brought Ethan in. So Ethan Barker, he's doing really, really well. So he's into the fold now, which allowed me to go to work as a professional family mediator, right? So
mhm.
I spend my time in the city centre where there could be people coming from like war zones, like some of the people recently, I guess, where Taliban took over or took
Mhm.
back over, there was a lot of people that had to leave the country at the time. And then obviously we have the boats coming in, where there's a lot of people that has to be dealt with, and then we have a lot of people that are fleeing domestic violence, and so it's yeah, everything is kind of in a situation where there's not enough hostels, there's not enough private rent, all of these types of things, and yeah, that's that's what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. But I think again, going back to what you've got, which I think is a really nice way of doing it, is where you're getting funded and offering free lessons.
Mhm.
I think like it's obviously breaking into daytime activity is quite difficult.
Yeah.
because the funding streams are different, but people don't necessarily want to pay a professional rate for the day because they see you as someone that teaches karate in the evening for £6 a
Mm.
head, or £7 a head, whatever it is. Um, so when you're doing it in the day, I think a lot of these activities are really, really important for homelessness,
Mhm.
because you're getting people coming in and it's giving them that self-worth. But let's face it, where the kids want to say come to our project because it's MMA and I can boast to my friends, all they want to say is I'm doing something valuable with my life. I
Yeah.
want I want that stature. I wanted to say, yeah, okay, you're bright in school, you're going to get your exams, but I'm doing something as well, and I'm quite tough, you know.
Mm.
So just leave me alone. I mean, and don't make me a victim. I think whereas I work in a very liberal setting where people are quite often able to just say, oh, well, I'm a victim, and people should just give me something, and people don't fit. So you're a homeless guy that's always stood on his own 2 feet, has had a load of situations happen, not in his own effect. Maybe he's lost his parent, lost he's got divorced, and gone into work and then being able to keep his job. And then guess what? That job, which he was putting 45 hours in a week, is taking away all his support networks. He hasn't got a job, he hasn't got a father, he hasn't got this, and now he's on the street because he's got no one to support
Mm.
him, and then everybody's judging him. So does he want to be seen as a victim? No, he doesn't want to be a victim. So you see some very proud people that are
Mm.
saying, well, no, I'm not a victim. I'll work this out myself. Whereas when you've got something like, all right, if I can't promote the dojo when I'm in work, right? But I'd be
Yeah.
like, have you ever thought about kind of just going to a gym? And that's the other thing, when the dojo and gym, you know, so dojo is Japanese word, and it
Mm.
has, for some people, pajamas, belts. A gym has is that
Yeah.
like a boxing gym, or is that a gym
Mm.
for lifting weights, or is that gym? So it's an English word, right? So you'd say every chance to go into a gym and they go, oh no, I don't do all that. People taking pictures of themselves. No, I'm not about that type of gym. I'm not about like a martial arts sort of, no, martial arts. What about boxing? Oh yeah, boxing. And then what about Thai boxing? But so it's got another
Mm.
language and it's got an English word. And, I think if you can get funding for it, I know Craig, Ewer's Academy have had fighting homelessness recently. Craig's in Cardiff.
Mhm.
And one of the kids there is competing in the Budo Championships and things like that. He's fighting in MMA, and it's changed his life. It's stopped him
Mm.
smoking cannabis. It's got him on a more positive. It's got networks around him. So I think with more people doing work like what we're trying to do around the UK, eventually could link up the point that people are taking a more positive. They understand men have testosterone. Men have to protect their ego. They're seen as a protector. They're not meant to be seen as vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the misogyny that people are saying is happening. There's this. They're trapped. They are trapped.
Mm.
So men's mental health and young men's mental health, especially with, I hate to say it, the whole COVID thing, because I think it can become an excuse now. COVID,
Yeah.
oh, blah, 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 because of COVID. But I think you've got to take it that kids were allowed to just sit around and do nothing for a few years.
Mm.
They were bought games. They were encouraged to do all the things they're not meant to be doing, but which are not good for them. But they had that for 4 years in their prime of their life.
Mm.
So how do you say to a 15-year-old now that they just gravitated from being in a room in a house to going to a gym where they're getting their gains and taking pictures?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know about you, but I get some pretty well-shaped fellas coming into the gym now that think that they're able to do more than they are, and then again, it's
Mm.
it's it's a real shock to them when they got a middle-aged guy that they can't deal with.
Yeah. I've got kind of, um, so I don't have many younger people. My group is like 35 plus.
Okay.
So I don't experience that much. But I see in the BJJ, we're doing stuff with the younger people. Say, oh, how come you're so strong? And I'm not ethically
Mm.
strong, but oh, you're 45 and you're rolling like a 20-year-old. I said, no, you're just 20-year-olds or like 45-year-olds.
Yeah,
Because you think you do, but you don't, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but do you think that you try to use martial arts for like supporting people and stuff like that, and you've got CIC, I've got CIC.
Mm.
I'm running now into a realization that there's so uh, understanding about martial arts as a tool for recovery and health that I'm kind of hitting the ceilings. I had a feedback from somebody from the panel of um, white rich guys uh, awarding awards, and it was a children's playground project and my project. And the people said, "Well, what the martial arts gonna do for people? They're just gonna be doing, a black belt doing a rough fighting. We rather give it to the playground."
Mm.
And the lady said, "There, we we are connected." She said, "Well, but you don't really understand. We've got less teaching for a council, few projects using martial art with a great result. Why I don't see that." Do you
Mm.
found that as well, that kind of barrier to promotion of martial arts as a valuable tool for recovery and health?
Yeah, 100%. I think, like, if anything, there's levels to that as well. So it's somebody that, and again, it comes down to communication and language. So if you say karate has been on long enough for people to have an understanding of it. And I think, again, listen to some of the things you've said in the past. It's like they assume karate for kids, so it's a little bit more palatable because they understand what it is. Whereas in when you say MMA, they're like, oh, that's barbaric, it's cockfighting, it's this, it's that, right? And I obviously we wear in Kudo, you wear a gi, and in Sambo you wear a gi, so Kurka. So that makes it more palatable because it starts bridging, right? But then the thing I went for a number of startups and all the rest of it and lost every single time because of what it was. The way I started my company was because I was working for a charity that worked with disaffected young people that was based on a farm, right? So the farm is fine because that sounds good. Everybody knows Old MacDonald can sing it. Everybody takes their kids to farms, and it's something that they're like, oh, animal therapy. It's soft, it's lovely, it's fluffy, right? Um, but the thing was, I said, look, I've started my company, and they're like, with all due respect, Mal, it's like we know you, we respect you for what you've done but martial arts, we don't really want to encourage people to fight because they don't understand, do they? So I think what we did at the beginning was a number of youth events, and then all of a sudden, when the kids speak louder than the adults, so you can get all the funding you want, but if none of the kids come, their project gets marked down at the end, and they're not
Yeah.
very good at their job if they can't get bums on seats. Whereas in our projects now, it's the kids telling the workers that's where they want to go. It's not coming. I went in a kind of organizational government level. So we're a vendor for the Vale of Glamorgan Council and for Cardiff Council, which
Mhm.
allows the schools, youth services, social workers to be able to refer in. But it's whether they want to pay because of the budgets, right? Whereas in when you've got kids that, unless obviously I'm looking at youth, but when you've got people that won't will only attend yours if they're given an option, they do it.
Mhm.
Last year we won the Partnership of the Year award, and that was based on the fact that majority of the kids voted for it and the staff that support the kids. So I think you're never really going to be able to convince somebody um, that is looking for new and interesting ideas with something they think they already understand.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be the product's got to shout louder than the people. So again, just honestly, from my point of view, may I just persevere because you're doing enough. There's enough social media out there. People will find you, and then people will shout for you, and it's the networks. People that I work with are the ones that do majority of the legwork. They're like, I'll go and speak to them. Don't worry, leave it to me, leave it to me. And they're the ones that push you over the line. So
Yeah.
and again, like I don't know how it's about 5 hours drive for me or something, but you're far enough away, but I'm still aware of your work. It
Mm.
just I think it'll just be at some point something, the penny drops with something, and then it falls. You just got to be consistent, haven't you?
Well, there's no other option. I'm not the one for giving up. So
Yeah.
right, you know, it's ups and downs. Something's working, then you're on a high, then you hit the low, and you know, you personally, I think more I do definitely, but most of the people we're more drawn to be impacted by negative stuff than positive stuff. It's
Yeah.
the positive wears off much faster than the negative, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Totally. 100%.
trying to just impact more people, and I'm learning now that I am a little bit, I don't want to sound like a victim because that's not what it is, but I am kind of disadvantaged in my area compared to other people who've been raised here because
Yeah.
I don't have such a big network of friends. And I'm
Right.
learning
Okay.
it is who you know, not what you do, really,
Right.
as
Yeah.
always. So I'm kind of 30 years behind on making friends.
Yeah.
But
No,
you
no,
know,
it's a real thing though, isn't it? You definitely
yeah,
need to have certain people, certain key people behind you. Um, but it's like anything. Once you've got one contact, they start speaking to other people. It's just about it's weather, and I guess this is why I'm working for a charity, a homeless charity, and obviously running the business or the GK
mhm,
Dojo CIT in the evenings is because that there's not it doesn't happen quickly. You know,
mm,
I think I can return to working for the company full time probably at this rate, maybe in 1 or 2 years, you know.
mhm,
And to be honest, when it gets to that point, it probably won't be what I want now, because, like going back to like AJ and Ethan, you've got AJ that's in his prime. I started the club like 25 years ago. So I was like a little bit younger than what he is now, and no one gave me the time of day. I could go in and you could tear people up and all the rest of it, but you're still a young man and no respect you. I'm in
yeah,
probably the worst shape of my entire life, and people give me more respect now than they did then. So I think it's if your face fits, and as I've been somebody that leads, you want to see that certain kids, and again, sorry to talk about youth, but it's kind of majority of our work is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they adopt you for the people they got missing in their life. So
Mm,
maybe they don't have that male role model that's like a father figure. So I fit better for that because of my age, you
mhm,
know. Whereas over time, I've gone from being their older brother, to being like an uncle figure, and then father, and eventually I'll probably end up being their grandfather, won't I? And if I'm still around doing it. So the boys kind of also fill that. I would really love to get a female instructor. We've got a lot more women in the club now. But it's kind of encouraging people to go down a path where there's potentially no money, isn't it? You know what I mean? There's no reward, so it feels a bit wrong to do that. We've got a part-time member of staff, Leah, um, and Leah's a student. She's studying the karate. She studies Kudo. She comes to both classes. She's in her 40s. I won't say the number because she'll probably murder me. But she's definitely one of the key players in the kind of female group, and she works for Welsh Wrestling as well in administration and planning.
oh, cool.
So, she's getting her money there. She does part-time role for the dojo, which helps pop it up. So that works. Maybe she would coach in the future when she's a higher grade or something.
Mhm,
But I think definitely having a balance between male and female helps, when
yeah,
you're going somewhere. So if there's those that are in the club, people kind of form like a constitution, and then have parents and members involved, but yourself, you're doing all the work.
yeah,
So you have to get it to the point where people are actively doing stuff, but at the end of the day, for them, it's a hobby, and then you have to respect that. The kids come in wanting to be Conor McGregor. They don't understand the path in front of them and the rejections and the losses, and they
mhm,
ride the highs until they don't get any highs anymore.
yeah,
A lot of people where we're at now with the dojo is that we get in. people wanting to hop across into the cage, and they can. Our higher grades will do it. Like some are really into it, some have not bothered at all. But again, that's having that banner of like concrete and GK dojo, not to
Yeah.
be we're an MMA gym, so the cage is what you do. We want to give those kind of paths, which seems a bit soft, I guess, within the MMA environment is a little bit soft.
Mm.
And then, but obviously from a traditional martial arts point of view, we're the kind of crazy end. So
Yeah.
it's a strange place to be, but still working on it like yourself, and it's trying to package it really.
Yeah. It's funny you said that about the now balancing with a female and male stuff. I used to always have more girls in my club
Yeah.
till the COVID.
Oh,
Since COVID, it totally wiped out women. It must have impacted them more with the confidence coming in. I'm only
yeah.
now starting to get females joining our club. So we used
Uh,
to be 60-40 female male. Now we are
yeah.
90-10. And it's very difficult for me to get the girls coming to the gym.
Oh, really? That's
So I
interesting.
don't know what it is. Maybe even there's a lot of groups popping up, women only, and I think that
Right.
takes them as well because they're obviously feeling more comfortable than rolling with the
Yeah.
blokes and stuff. So, but
I
we
got an
talk.
issue with that though. I have a big issue with I've done some women only clubs, but
Mhm.
let's face it, the thing with teaching women, before I go off on one, is that women need to be able to defend themselves against men.
Yeah.
Let's face it, the majority, even though women are nasty, you see their fights, and the
Mm.
hair pulling and the uppercuts and the knees to the head and all the rest of it. Um, that is a scrap that they'll probably come out a bit battered and bruised on the other side,
Mm.
but then it's not going to be as serious as a man really
Yeah.
doing and what is worse to that person, when you're looking at even down to not so much the sexual attack side of it, but if a man really wants to impose his size and strength, you know, um, I don't teach the women in my club any different than I do the men.
Yeah, I do the same in my club, and
I
I
don't
think
see
that
it.
the women needs to get used to it, to the presence of men, and especially in a close contact, right? If you just
Mm.
there's some comfort between female and a female, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
of
it's
course.
very
Yeah, yeah.
even for men, it's very different. As you know, in a BJJ, it's very
Yeah.
different when the sweaty, heavy, hairy bloke lays on you and you're a smaller
Yeah.
person. It is
Yeah.
very frightening.
Yeah.
So just accustomed to that, to not panic, gives you a lot of more confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It definitely does. And like having women there for supporting each other, making sure they got enough rounds. As a coach as well, there's certain positions that are a little bit
Mm.
more intimate than others. So, having other women around to go through that is good. But it really does, you build their confidence when they start getting and you can see why BJJ is a big thing for building confidence in that because
Yeah.
they're dealing with a lot of situations where women would be at a massive disadvantage,
Mhm.
and there's nothing worse than someone saying, "Oh, I just hit them in the balls or punch them in the throat," and that'll do the job because you're like, okay, you know, see how that works because it don't. Um, but I think in a striking environment, you can almost convince people that being smaller and faster is an advantage, and the size doesn't count, and it really does count,
Yeah.
range and weight and all those things come in, don't they? So the more they're subjected to, the better. I think it's just whether a woman is willing to subject herself to that level of trauma. I think it's more natural for a guy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, and but I think women bring a very intellectual standing to the game as well, and men act very differently when women are in the class too. It takes
Yes.
down the levels of testosterone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. We had a perfect example of that. We went for a uh, Christmas meal with the BJJ guys. I was just
Mm.
guys only, and the conversation was as men. And then one
Mm.
of the guys' wife came in, totally different set of conversation. And like everyone is so cultural and polite, and you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think that's what you need, isn't it? I mean, like I went through school in an all boys school, you know, and you can see the difference between conversation with guys that came through a single sex school compared to the guys that went through it. It's mixed now in Barry, but it's got its pros and cons though, right? I think you can have a women's only group, but if you had a men's only group, it would be seen to be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things are just not right now. I think, men need the space, women need their space, and there needs to be, depends what you want the outcome to be. And if as a woman, you want to learn self-defense and you want to feel confident in a situation, you need to train with men.
Mm.
It's as simple as that. If you want to learn or study a martial art, then, and you can have a women's only group, no problem. Because if that's what you're after, meeting with women, empowering each other, going for socials and all that, fine. But if you're serious about self-defense, you need to train with men.
Mm. What the future holds for you?
Who knows? Evolution. I think if one thing that I'm very conscious of is time. I think when we spoke last time, we were all kind of trapped in houses, busting at the seams, trying to, do as much, meet as many people as possible. I met a lot of people, but it's like anything. It's like meeting someone and saying, "I'll see you next year. Come and see me. Come and see me," and then you just don't. And that bit gets to me because I'm not that type of person. I see people over the world and I say, "You should come to Wales." And they go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I got a list and I go through them and I'm ticking them. And obviously, if they need somebody to pay for them to come over, it's a lot more challenging. If they can afford to meet me halfway, it's different, But I want to see, I want to kind of tick the boxes and get a certain amount of people to Wales. I'm very proud of my country. I want for my dojo to see the teams get to fight in the cage because that's all they seem to want to do. So more of them to do that. Like AJ took the British title in combat sambo, so I'd like to see more straps at the dojo from that. Kudo, I hope that with the home nations being separate, I hope that Scotland grows. I hope England grows separately in Wales. So in 2027, we can go to the next World Championship as a bigger, stronger team. Personally, I'd like to reconnect with my karate roots. So in the next, I'd probably say I'm teaching in Hamburg next month. So in Germany twice and Neuss at the end of the year, which I really enjoy Germany. I think I've grown a love for Germany. Considers VED. I'm not sure whether my grandfather would be very happy with me saying that right now, but
Different people, different approach.
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it's like you say, these things change so quickly, don't they? And people are I find Germany really interesting culturally from all of those things, So I think going to Germany is actually helping me to realize the kind of the depth of the knowledge that I was taught within karate, and I'd like to redo that because obviously you're talking about age, and I think karate still has that. The bit that frustrates me with karate is where you have a lot of people with their grades and not being realistic about what they see their grade as. If it's a knowledge level, so if someone's sixth, seventh, then they've been in the game a long time,
Sorry,
well,
my
that's okay.
daughter is from school. Sorry. Sorry, Mal. I forgot to.
That's all right.
My wife is in Germany. Speaking of Germany, and
That's
I
it.
forgot to pack the PE kit for my son. So they said, "Would you be able to come because they're going today summer doing stuff
Oh,
out."
they're coming now straight away. Yeah. 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 So yeah, I think like that with like I was saying with Germany and teaching out there and being part of karate and the grades and blah blah blah. I think I need to find like-minded people within the karate community that number one appreciate where their knowledge levels at, where and I'm not talking history and lineage and all the rest of it. I think it's just on the basis of practicality, but also technique and its origin, because I find that still really interesting. Because, like, do you know when you go through kata and you're seeing variations, and when
Mhm.
you understand who taught it, it gives you an idea of what they were thinking, which I find quite interesting. And but also their ability, their physical ability. So if they've never really fought, but they're trying to push what they're teaching is based on
Yeah.
experience, then I find that a little bit of a block, you know? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Karate and traditional martial arts got that ability that you can hide behind the belt without doing
yeah,
anything.
yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
like
Yeah,
about I like combat sports, and I
yeah,
can encourage everybody to go at least one step into the mat or a
yeah,
ring or a whatever cage
yeah.
to just see if you can do what you actually saying you can do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it doesn't really matter if they can't. It's just the bit with me is that you say you can throw, like, there's a lot of people can throw a better kick, tips and
Mm,
kicks, and all the rest are much better than all the physically fantastic. But don't tell me you can fight, you know,
mm,
if you can fight, because we have to have a mutual respect for what we're good at. So, and then obviously if you don't want to fight anymore, like I'd kind of, um, I'd say like early 20s, I competed so much, I'd had so many tournament fights. It's like ridiculous. And going to all the gyms and scrapping. My nose is an absolute mess. About operations over operations. My body's battered. But I did that very early, but I don't feel the need now. Like, because people ask, "Are you going to jump back in?" And I'm like, no, I'm not in it for that anymore. I'm a
mm,
coach. That's what I do now. And if I feel like I have that urge, then I jump on the mat in rounds. I have a club that I can do that. I don't need to go and compete. You know what I mean?
mm,
I'm like, it's this very weird thing I find for someone that's aging, lower levels of testosterone, still and feeling that they want to establish a fighting legacy against. Let's face it, physically, the men early 20s now, they're just absolute specimens.
yeah.
You just look back at videos of people in their 20s when we were fighting in 20s, they don't look
Mm,
anywhere near the same. It's looking at rugby, isn't it? Look at
yeah.
rugby, people running around, they were drinking beer and stuff going in between rounds and all that. So it's just moved on. So I like I was saying about I'm hoping I'm going to find that in the IPK. I really
Mm,
do. I think that personal thing with the karate. So if I am compartmentalizing, I'm shifting myself more into the karate type world and bringing some of that combat experience world into it. I'll continue to support the British Sambo Federation with John Clark and Colin. Colin's had some bad health situations recently, but that's a fantastic organization. I'm really going to be pushing people towards combat Sambo. Kudo stole my heart. So, when I called myself Kudo Mal, it was a bit of a joke at the time. But I will still have a big love for Kudo, and I can see,
mm.
the Japanese, the whole, like we were saying, with the samurai spirit, the Bushido, this sort of thing behind it. I think it's definitely there. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will just be my guilty little pleasure on the side. Um, um,
Cool.
and then my body stays together with enough tape.
Mal, thank you very
Yeah,
much for your time.
it was a
Always
pleasure.
pleasure to talk to you, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna be able to rock up on your seminar and be thrown about, experience kudo, whatever you're gonna be teaching,
Yeah,
and I hope we can meet up soon.
you're a star. Thanks, Les. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. Just